Hi everyone, I'm Sophie. I work for Star Academies, a multi-academy trust with schools across the country. I'm not a teacher, but I'm privileged to work with teachers and school leaders as part of my job. I am a mum, and while the summer holidays are in sight, I'm still conscious of the importance of keeping my kids engaged and learning throughout the next few weeks and ready for their return to school, whenever that happens. To accompany our home learning advice line, StarLive, we are hosting a weekly broadcast with a range of guests to cover different ideas to help you keep your kids learning and happy. This week, we're joined by Alex Quigley, who works for the Education Endowment Foundation, an organisation funded to undertake and review educational research about what works to help children achieve the very best they can in school. Alex has taken some of the principles that underpins this work and is going to share some tips about easy things parents and carers can do based on the research that will help children learn and remember more. Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess my first question is, what does research tell us about what can work in a home environment to support children to learn?
Okay, so I think there's a large amount of research that we often share, mainly with teachers, around pupil behaviour and children's behaviour in classrooms. But of course, we've always looked at things like homework and how you can best, work remotely, work from home. So over these last few months, quite obviously, we've been trying to think around the best ways to support parents and to support home learning. And I think one of the best areas to focus on, it's what's called in the research self-regulation, but pretty much what that means is how your child can organize themselves, how they can stay motivated, how they can get their tasks done effectively and just make good choices. Because what we know is missing for children is all of those supports that happen in the classroom. Even the school bells during the day help organize their day and get them motivated to learn, get them organized. And when you take those away, we need to offer some of those supports. And I think a good example would be for my own children. So I have a daughter, Freya, who's in year 6, and my little boy, Noah, who's in year 4. And one thing we had with my daughter very recently is that she has a piano exam coming up, and it's going to be remote, as everything is at the moment. And as part of that, she got a bit worried. She got a bit stressed about this exam coming up in a couple of weeks. She didn't feel prepared. So her first reaction was to have a bit of a cry, get a bit upset about it. And that's completely natural, completely normal. But then what I tried to do is offer that support, that modeling of self-regulation. Okay, we've got a challenge. How can we get organized? And in practical terms, what we did, we talked through, yes, an exam can be a bit of a worry, but how can we break down that big and frightening thing in a couple of weeks? How can we break it down day by day into practice that we can do that makes us feel less stressed, less worried about that challenge? Yeah. And we just did a really rough and ready timetable together. She's been ticking it off. We've been just giving her help with those practices. And actually, what we've been doing is just modeling that self-regulation, breaking down the act of home learning, which is quite tricky and a bit too big for children, actually, breaking it down into smaller chunks so she can better manage herself and not getting involved in all the complexities of what's being learnt, whether it the music or mathematics, actually just helping her feel safe, organized, giving her the appropriate nudges and giving her the help to stay organized and stay motivated.
Great. And that echoes a lot of the messages we've heard before on StarLive about routine. We've heard about the importance of routine. Is this just about when they wake up and when they sit down to work, or is there more to it than that?
Okay, so I think really what parents and the pressure I felt has been around home learning. And often that's been in the morning, although not exclusively. But it's less about getting up, although a good sleep routine is so useful, obviously, for learning, because your brain does all of that resting and consolidating during the evening. But really, I think when we're looking at routines and what the research might indicate, it is about breaking down the morning into small chunks. And it's trying to make sure that the strategies school has offered we can mirror some of those strategies and keep it really simple. One example, I'd say that over the past 3 months, I've been keeping simple, but keeping up with, is using spelling practice with my little boy, Noah. So each evening we have just 5 minutes. We've got a pretty rough and ready pack of flashcards, in truth, but they are flashcards, piece of card with the year 4 or 5 spelling list. And just each day, usually in the evening, we just have 5 minutes. It's quite playful. It's not very stressful. It's not a big hour challenge. And we just keep those little small practice sessions going. And that one routine has been really helpful for him. And it's just given that repeated practice, which he would have got from school, but obviously some of that's been taken away. And I had a real happy parenting kind of teacher moment where the other day he was doing about the ancient Greeks and learning about Greek heroes and the Titans. And he was trying to remember the names and he was struggling. And he said, "Dad, have we got any flashcards that I can write down the names on?" And I thought, well, yes, we have. And I was delighted that we did. But also it really stood out to me that's regulation, self-regulation in a perfect example, that he's actually thinking, I learn really well in this way, and that's the tool that will help me. Now, I think parents don't need to worry about thinking of lots of new ideas themselves. Actually, school with their remote communications will have supported these. And I think for parents, it's keeping it simple and doing those things like, little 5-minute bursts, just asking questions about what they've been learning. So I don't always feel confident with all the topics that Freya is studying. When she's doing her year 6 maths, I might have to slope away and do some checking. But when I do just kind of ask her about that, I just ask open questions, just get her talking about it. So simple, small routines.
That's great, thank you. And you've done a great deal of work on literacy and have got a couple of fantastic books out about it. What are some of the best ways parents and carers can support children to develop their literacy at home in addition to the spelling idea?
Yeah, so actually spelling's great and spelling's really valuable. It's valuable for your writing, it's valuable for reading skill, etc. I think what I put first is reading. And I think with parents, it's not necessarily about reading those tasks that have been sent home, although there might need to be some focus on the reading that's been set by school. But I think for me, all the best research indicates that children who read habitually, children who read for pleasure, they're the children who flourish in school because they get access to lots of language, and the language of books is just slightly different to the language of daily talk. It's got rare vocabulary. It's got slightly more formal structures. So when children are reading for pleasure, when they're reading outside of their home learning, they've been set by school, that adds lots of value. So for me, I think parents don't need to get so worried about intervening and be trying to be the teacher at home. What I would pose is try and support that reading habit. And that can be, for me at home, we try and nudge them to read in the morning time after they've done, some of their schoolwork, and just that small habit they've got into. And then before bedtime, we have a nice, pleasurable read. And there's some obvious principles there, some choice around what they're reading. Children love choice, even if that's between two books or 2 texts, at least there's an element of choice. And quite obviously, they need access to some reading materials. So schools are often a good place to ask for support around the right pitched reading materials. But for me, it is about that additional habitual reading. And it doesn't have to be big either. Just like the spelling, 10 minutes a day can have a big impact and be really positive. And as we look to those summer holidays, I think that's a great way to just sustain that learning and to sustain those benefits. And I think that's got great value. My one last tip will be around when you read with your child, again, just ask those questions around what's being read. So just before bedtime with Noah, I'll ask him, okay, what did we read in the story last night? And just that one comprehension question really triggers lots of useful thinking. And then when we finish, I just ask that one question, okay, what's going to happen next? And just that prediction is really helpful for Noah. And what that does, it consolidates the reading, makes it more memorable, and he just drenches out all the learning we can get from that small spell of reading.
That's great. That's really helpful. I have a Noah too who loves to read, and actually the problem is slowing him down. I can't buy books quick enough, but it's a great problem to have. So
great problem.
He loves reading. And you've mentioned some things, and we'll include links below the video. But are there any resources that you would recommend for supporting children to learn at home?
Yeah, so I work for the Education Endowment Foundation, and we're a charity that actually supports teachers and schools to help children flourish, and particularly disadvantaged children. And we normally produce resources for teachers, but given the unique circumstances of the pandemic and school closures, we also provided some useful resources for parents. So on our COVID-19 page, there's a section, resources for parents. And unsurprisingly, one of the most popular resources there has just been tips around reading with your child. There's a trust framework, which is a little framework, again, to help that talk with your child. And they're simple, they're accessible. And one resource around routine setting. And there's a tool that goes with that around that can help your child with routines. And also at the end of that resource, there's something around goals. And that's one thing, again, just setting small goals for your children. If you've got, a son who reads voraciously, then goals might be, less important for that specific task. But then when they're doing something else they're, slightly less confident on, then setting small goals, some rewards, they're really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure we share the link to those resources. So thank you so much for sharing all of those great tips and ideas, Alex. They're certainly going to help me, and I hope they help our viewers. With 3 weeks left until the summer holidays, and the prospect of many children of not returning to school until September, we want you to know that StarLive is here to help. For more personalised advice and guidance, we would encourage you to call StarLive on the number at the bottom of the screen, 0330 313 9162. You can also visit our website, starline.org.uk, and contact us there, or you can contact us through Facebook. Just search for StarLive Helpline. Next week on StarLive, we'll be talking to an expert sleep psychologist about the current situation and how that's affecting children's sleep and how parents and carers can help. We look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, stay safe.